Good afternoon and good morning, good evening to everybody. And it's my great honor to moderate this very important session. The topic of the session is energy transition, which is very important currently. Before this energy transition, we already have 2 times energy transition. The first one is from biomass to coal, and the second transition is from coal to petroleum. Now the new, the third transition is from fossil energy to non-fossil. So the difference of this around the energy transition from the last 2 ones is this time it's not only the technology improvement only, but also the policy driven. So it's more complex and more difficult. So now we are going to talk about this important topic. And this time we invite a very wonderful panelist. Let me briefly introduce Professor Junichi Fujino from Institute for Global Environment Strategy, Professor Junhong Wu from Konkuk University, South Korea, Professor Yadolesh Sabihi from Sharif University of Technology, Iran, Professor Joya Shri Roy from Geneva University, Calcutta, India, in Bangladesh, Chair Professor, Asian Institute of Technology, Thailand, and also Professor Walker Cray from IIASA. And so now I'd like to invite every panelist to present for 10 or less minutes, then followed by our panel discussion. So first, Professor Junichi Fujino, please.
Thank you very much, Professor Yen, to kindly introducing me to also the IIASA colleagues for this great organization of this session. Yeah, I'm like a YSSP alumni in 1998, a long time ago. And then I'm very much happy to feel like I'm back to IIASA. Thank you so much. So today I'd like to touch on this energy transition issue by kind of the ranging up issue like localizing climate actions and sustainable development goals. Just the around 10 days, next 10 days, we will have a COP26. It's a 1 year delay due to the COVID-19, but we definitely have this COP to decide our direction towards the zero carbon. Also, there is a kind of the initiative on SDGs, like a high-level political forum. About the COP, the last year, UNFCCC launched a Race to Zero campaign for all non-stakeholders. All as the stakeholders, and then it including like business or city, investor, university, and then around more than 700 cities joined this Race to Zero campaign, including the 91 Japanese cities. And then also like from the Malaysia, the Kuala Lumpur city joined this initiative, and I'd like to explain kind of background of this challenge by Kuala Lumpur city. KL city developed kind of the scenario toward zero carbon using the AIM, Asia Pacific Integrated Model. From 2010 to 2050. And so they said that the 2010 is a baseline, 2020 is a carbon aware, 2030 is low carbon, and 2040 is zero carbon ready, and then 2050 is the zero carbon neutral. This is a background why the KL city developed kind of pathway towards the zero carbon by 2050. Around 3-4 years ago, IGS also, as a related organization, support the KL City Hall to develop the 70 by 30 blueprint. It's a greener, better Kuala Lumpur. And then when we developed a scenario, we found that roughly half emission comes from the buildings. So we asked the Tokyo Metropolitan Government to work together with the KL City Hall to develop the strategy for having the energy retrofitting in like a public building, because in KL there are around 2,000 public buildings, and then TMG, Tokyo Metropolitan Government, also have the public building around 4,001, and then she already have good know-how. So, and together with the IGS, University Technology Malaysia Sustainable Energy Development Authority, we work together with the Tokyo and KL to develop this system, T2KL low carbon system. And then through the analysis, we found that is roughly 80% electricity are used in around 20% public buildings. And then more than 60% energy used at the air conditioning system, because it's Malaysia, it's a hot, a bit humid country. Then we identify the which buildings or which devices are suitable for the energy retrofitting, and then we identify 4 options, and then KL City Hall already secure her own city and budget to do the retrofitting for this year or next year. Due to these kind of the collaboration, the Ministry of Environment Japan kindly invited the Governor of Tokyo Metropolitan Government, Madam Koike, also Mayor of KL, Datu Seri Mahadi, for the first Zero Carbon City International Forum last March, together with the Glasgow City Council leader. And then now we look for the to develop kind of methodology, also the organization and structure to continue this scheme for low carbon public building procurement and toward the 2030 and beyond. Also, KL City Mayor set the this district once a measure as the carbon neutral, zero carbon district. So then now we also do the more detailed development of the zero carbon district. And then I will go to COP26 for 2 weeks and then organize several events. So then I'm happy to invite all of you to this event in Glasgow, or you can join by online. And then another big topic is the SDGs, and then I'd like to shortly introduce the voluntary local reviews. Many of you may already know about this high-level political forum, but this is kind of the central scheme to having the follow-up and review of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and then Sustainable Development Goals at the global level. Like every July, we have this high-level political forum. And this year, 42 countries submitted the voluntary national reviews, and from Asia, 13 countries, including Japan, submit the voluntary national reviews. And then when we look at the Japanese voluntary national review, it kindly includes 4 voluntary local reviews. IGS is one of the a leading organization to support the local government to do the voluntary local reviews. It's a system for local community governments to do the review of the SDGs. And then during the high-level political forum 2021, UN Habitat and then UCLG, United Cities and local governments, organized a VLR and VSR, Voluntary Subnational Review Days event. And then Executive Director of UN Habitat, Maimuna Mot Sharif, also the UCLG Secretary General launched this event. And then introducing the volume 2 of the guidelines for voluntary local reviews. And now there are more than 50, 60 cities, regions join this initiative to do the review and then follow up of the SDGs by their own area, community region. From Japan, from Asia, we have a new report reviewing from the Sharam or Surabaya or Subanjaya, and then so on. And then IGS also do kind of the review for the movement of the voluntary local review. We call it the state of the voluntary local reviews. This is the second volume of one, and then we also write the IISD guest article. So if some of you are interested, please visit this website. So now our challenge is that is how to get the synergy between like these localizing climate and then localizing SDGs. Because this is a scheme for Paris Agreement and then 2030 agenda. Basically, it looks for the national regime, but the things are happening in cities or from local. So how we have a good practices, and then how we can accelerate energy transition for global sustainability. I think this is a good topic for today's the energy transition session. So I raise up this issue. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Fujino. You talked about the many actions in Japan and also the interaction in Asian countries. So very good. Thank you so much. Now let's invite Professor Jun-Hong Woo from South Korea. Professor, please.
Thank you, Professor Ying. Let me share my screen first. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, let me start. First of all, thank you very much for this giving me this nice opportunity, and it's my honor and pleasure to have a chance to show my view and give some research result on this energy transition towards sustainable energy future. So basically, I'm working on air quality issues together with energy issues. So today I wanted to show some of my work on decarbonization in South Korea and its co-benefit for air quality. It's very starting point work, but it's good to show and share some thought about that. So maybe you know South Korea, but let me show this again. South Korea is pretty small country, it's very large in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. It's 11th largest greenhouse gas emitter as of 2016, which is 5.7% of China and 10.7% of US. And its CO2 emission is 7th in the world and 4th among the OECD members, following US, Japan, and Germany. And 87% of total greenhouse gas is from the CO2 from fossil fuel combustion. So carbonization in Korea is pretty big, as I said. So in our government announced the vision and key element of decarbonization of in Korea by carbon neutrality by 2050. There are 5 key elements of the 2050 vision, which is expanding the use of clean power and hydrogen across all sectors, and improving energy efficiency to a significant level, and commercial deployment of carbon removal and other future technologies, and scaling up the circular economy to improve industrial sustainability, and also enhancing carbon sink. So as of last December, the 2050 carbon neutral strategy was announced, and this August and last week, we have 2015 carbon neutral scenarios in Korea as and in first draft and final version respectively. So here is a decarbonization scenario in Korea. This is just first draft. Actually, last week we have final version, but I couldn't have a chance to, implement this one in my scenario because it's not completely open yet. So net zero scenario by sector shows the greenhouse gas emissions as a million ton of CO2 equivalent of 727.6 actually teragram per year CO2 equivalent of emissions to 25.4 and 18.7 and 0 emissions as a scenario 1, 2, 3. So it was the first draft of our scenario, and as you see, our country has the biggest portion of emissions coming from power generation sector, and then industry, transportation, buildings, agriculture, fishery, and waste. So to achieve carbon neutrality, we have a pretty aggressive plan for the power generation, industry, and transportation, also buildings and agriculture. And also we try to use a lot of CCUS technology, which is still developing, but aggressively try to implement that into the carbon neutral plan. So here are some mitigation options and outlook by sector. So for energy supply, use CCUS and energy mix and promote hydrogen-based economy. And also for industry, the improve equipment efficiency, and again, hydrogen technologies are pretty much very important aspect of industrial carbon neutralization. And buildings is also energy efficiency need to be improved. We have a high efficiency equipment and good practicing. Transportation, the carbon friendly cars, electric cars and everything, and use biofuels. And for the waste, we use recycle and reduce and source, and methane gas recovery is very important. And farming is smart farming with low carbon practice and things like that. And also there is some controversy in carbon sink because there's a lot of nobody's against the expansion of the forest, but making timbers and deforestation and then forestation again is a little controversial thing in South Korea now. Okay, it was a brief introduction on the decarbonization, but we have also a big problem in air quality, especially for the fine particles. So we in the center you see the national contribution of South Korea and out of country contribution in here, and also in the pie chart you see the primary fine particles versus secondary fine particles like secondary organics and sulfate, nitrate, ammonium, and changes of emissions in China, changes of emissions in South Korea. Here you see the CO2 emissions China from year 2010 to 2017 is increased, but is stable. But there's a lot of decoupling of air pollutant is decreasing trend, and Korea is pretty stable, and we have a relatively younger population in here, unlike Japan or US. But we are worrying about aging and wind speed and PM concentration changes. Wind speed is keep decreasing, so due to maybe climate change. So the concentration is higher in the same emissions. So we did a little bit of research on the co-benefit study using IIASA GAINS model. Use IEA energy scenario, which is STEPS, APS, and net zero. APS is announced pledge scenario, and CO2 emission, as you see, is keep decreasing in every scenario, but decreasing very rapidly in APS and NGE scenario. So there's co-control effect for the air pollutants for CO, SO2, NOx, PM 2.5, and ammonia, VOC. So SO2, NOx, and ammonia can make inorganic secondary aerosols, and NOx and VOC can make secondary organic aerosol as it takes up like 75% to 85% of fine particles in the air in Korea. So that are very important as well as the primary PM 2.5 emissions. So this kind of co-control effect is very big, but for the VOC it's relatively low, and ammonia is even increasing. So that's the problem. So even with those kind of caveat, we apply the air quality simulation using GAINS model for the out of Korea region versus in Korea region with different energy scenarios, like STEP scenarios for out of Korea for year 2015 versus APS scenarios in Korea. So you see the improvement of air quality in different scenarios. For if everybody is working on net zero scenarios, in contrast to the STEPS versus APS, is we can achieve more than 7.5 microgram per cubic meter of fine particle improvement in the future. This is a very big one for South Korea. But we still need to consider a lot of different things, including the aging. You see this kind of aging distribution. We are expecting much more aged country in year 2030, sure for 2050. So we will have more better things, and carbon neutrality will help. And regional impact is this is SO2 emissions in here is distinct in the steel mills, where the steel mills are located, and this is ammonia. So usually ammonia is coming from the rural area, which has more aged population living. So if SO2 emissions or NOx emissions are decreasing with some ammonia combination, then we can have more benefits or even more worse conditions due to the nonlinear reaction of secondary pollutant formation. And pollution distribution linked with this kind of emissions distribution and air quality formation, then air pollutant formation will give us more fine chance to analyze this kind of co-benefit of decarbonization. Okay, this is the things that I wanted to share with you. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Jung-Woo. Thank you so much. Yeah, you talk about Korea's strategy to a carbon neutral energy system, and also the co-benefit to the air quality as well as regional impact. Thank you so much. And
Thank you, Professor.
Then let's invite Professor Yadulash Sabuhi from Iran to give your presentation, please.
Good morning in Europe and good afternoon in China. Thank you very much for introducing me. I would like to share some experiences that we have learned in Iran and also about the green cities and also bridges for transition from fossil fuels to renewable energy and a policy formulation which facilitates this transition to green energies. First, I would like, if you allow me, I will share my screen. Do you have my screen, please?
Yes.
Yes, okay. We are working in two projects at the moment, which are very important. One is involved with the green cities for transition to renewable energies in that city. I will introduce that city very shortly, very briefly. Another one is the formulation of a policy on energy transition when energy efficiency is considered as the most important item in this policy. And it links the sustainable development to reducing greenhouse gases and also transition towards the renewable energy sources. Well, Iran is, as you can see in this map, is a large country with 1.648 million kilometers square of area. And the solar intensity is very high, especially in the central part of Iran and in the also desert part of Iran, where the population is very few and population density is less than in other parts of the country. And we have a considerable source of wind energy, which can be used as renewable sources. One of the city in this area, which is called Adakan, which is in a desert area and has high solar energy intensity, is surrounded by energy intensive industries like ceramic industries and also iron and steel industries. And air pollution in the city is very high. And we have been asked by local authorities and local population to find a solution for clean air. What we have developed that to reduce the pollution from industrial sites by capturing CO2 and also exhaust gases, and also using the lost energy in industrial sectors to provide energy, heat and cooling to the city, which in the further study, we found that it is possible to substitute all the use of natural gases and other energy sources in the region by energy efficiency in industrial areas and also using solar powers. And the second item that we have to identify as very important is that it use to capture CO2 from exhaust gases and use a solar power and to produce e-fuel. And e-fuel can be exported to European countries and other areas. And we are in the process of implementing this project in the city of Adakan, which, as you can see, is the blue circle here. And it's in the center of Iran. And I intend also to get in touch with Professor Fujino to talk about whether we can consider this city as a voluntary cases for clean air and also transition to renewable energies in that area and reduce the emissions from the heavy industries like steel industry or ceramic industries, which are located in that city. This is one of the projects that we are discussing and we are working on. And also we have investors for implementing some projects. And I think it would be a good example in Asian countries how to transfer the energy sector from fossil-based energy sources to renewable energy cases. Another project that we are working very intensively is at national level, formulation of a new policy for reducing energy intensity and also contributing to greenhouse gas emission. It is called Market for Energy Efficiency and Environment. The major present state of Iranian energy sector is that the energy consumption is about 2.3 billion barrels of oil equivalent per year. and per capita is 26.8 barrels of oil equivalent per year. If you consider the GDP, I mean, our energy consumption is almost close to primary energy consumption in Germany, but the GDP production in Germany is about 10 times more than GDP consumption in Iran. You can see that we have a low energy productivity and very high energy intensity. This is a major problem for the country and for the development of the country. And greenhouse gas emission from energy sector is about 650 million tons of CO2 equivalent. In 2020, we have reached almost the level of greenhouse gas emission in Germany, which is, as I mentioned, that the GDP in Germany is about 10 times of GDP in Iran. And you can see the intensity of greenhouse gases is very high in our cases. Potential for energy saving, we have identified in all sectors, and the energy supply sector is about 49%, which means about 1.5 billion oil equivalent that we can reduce energy consumption at the present level, compared to the present level. And it will contribute to about 54% of reduction in greenhouse gas emission, which will be equivalent to 351 million tons of CO2 equivalent to GWP per annum, which is a huge amount that we can reduce through energy efficiency. Actually, what does energy efficiency mean here? Energy efficiency would contribute to sustainable development because it will lead to reduction of resources which are used in different sectors, and it will lead to reduction the cost of economy, national economy, which will contribute to economic growth and sustainable development. At the same time, since energy sector in Iran is based on oil and natural gas, and oil and natural gas contribute about 99% of primary energy in Iran. Therefore, any reduction in energy consumption would lead to reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. Therefore, energy efficiency at the same time will contribute to reducing greenhouse gas emission. At the same time, it will contribute to lowering the cost of energy of the national economy, which also would contribute to acceleration of the economic growth. And it is an important point in the Iranian case that where we are trying to develop a linkage between energy efficiency, economic growth, and also reducing global, greenhouse gas emissions. And one of the challenges that we are facing in Iran is state-owned companies and the domination of the state in the energy sector. And it is a very major challenge, and private sector has very little share in the energy sector. It is a major challenge that we have and we are facing in our country. And this state monopoly has continued in the last 30 years because the energy prices are very low and huge energy subsidies are paying in the Iranian energy sector. Electricity price at the moment is less than half a cent per kilowatt hour, which when you compare it to the electricity price in other countries, you can see it's very, very low. And natural gas price is less than 7.7 euro cents per cubic meter, and gasoline is about 10 euro cents per liter. I mean, you can see that energy prices are very low. This is due to the fact that the energy production, primary energy production in Iran has low costs. And the opportunity cost of primary energy is not paid by the consumers. And that is why the price differential between international prices and domestic prices is large, and there are considerable amount of energy subsidies that Iranian economy pays. Increase in energy prices is socially unacceptable because we have low GDPs, low income, and we have high rate of inflation in the country. Any increase in energy prices is considered as the responsibility of the government, and then the government faces the social unrest. The one issue that we witnessed was in 2019, where the gasoline prices was increased almost to 10 cents, and there was an uprising in the country. Therefore, the increasing energy prices is also socially unacceptable. This is a major challenge that in the country we are facing. What we have done, we have formulated a transition system, a policy which is called market for energy efficiency. We are using the price differential in these cases in order to promote the energy efficiency because the petroleum chemical feedstock is for natural gas about 12 cents per cubic meter. It is compared to household prices about 12 times. And also we have price differentials between domestic market and export prices. And therefore, we have a formulated market for energy efficiency and environment. It means that any individual or any firm that applies an energy efficiency policy or project, they can save some energies and they will be allowed to sell the saved energy to sectors by high prices or to export them. And it will provide some incentive for private sectors and consumers to promote the energy efficiency projects, and they will be economically feasible. And we hope that the private sectors will enter into the energy market and introduce some competition in the Iranian energy market, which is heavily owned by state company. Therefore, introduction of competition in the energy efficiency sector will contribute to reducing the energy consumption and reducing greenhouse gas emission. This market is compatible with restructuring energy market and paving the path for private sectors, and also is compatible with sustainable development because it reduces the destruction of resources and energy losses in the country, and also reducing the greenhouse gas emission. Based on our experiences that I have, I would like to propose some further cooperation on the umbrella of IIASA. One is the exchange experiences and preparing a white paper in cooperation with different countries. The countries in Asia could cooperate with each other and also exchange experiences. And I would like to propose that under IIASA, we establish Asia chapter. And on the Asia chapter, East Asian Committee and also West Asian Committee, therefore we can arrange several webinars here and contribute to exchange of experiences. And also we can cooperate together, producing white papers and identifying the challenges and also policy formulation, how we can cooperate in these sectors. The task forces that could be developed, voluntarily under this umbrella could work on integrated approach for system analysis of energy transition. As I mentioned, in the case of Erdogan, that we are also linking renewables to capturing CO2 and producing e-fuels and also exporting e-fuels. These are integrated approaches that could contribute to further development of efforts on reducing greenhouse gases. Secondly, multi-country cooperation of energy researchers and analysis could be developed under this umbrella. And also ETCs, energy trading systems, which are developing rapidly, especially in East Asia, and it has been developed in Europe. We can try to link these ETS in different countries together, and it will provide a larger world-level market for utilizing the international resources for further development of energy efficiency and also reducing greenhouse gases and also further developing green cities and also green villages, which are many villages in different Asian countries, and also voluntary participation of energy consumers in ETCs. ETS could be possible, and it could also contribute to individual efforts and also for the development of green cities, as Professor Fujina spoke about this point. And as I mentioned, we are also in the process of developing this green city. Then I will try to contact Professor Fujina whether we can also contribute to this international efforts on developing green city. Thank you very much, and I will be ready for any discussion. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Professor, for your interesting presentation. You talk about the specific situation in desert, and also you gave some very important suggestions to our possible cooperation. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
And now let's invite Professor Sri Roy from India in Thailand. Professor Roy, please.
Hi, good morning and good afternoon to everybody. And thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to share my research and thoughts with all of you. And what I'm going to present is a few things. So basically, I'm starting from the fact that we know from one of our recent report, which is an assessment based on 10 influential reports, and which says that it very clearly shows that in this decade, we need to reduce GHG emissions, and also which are the sectors where we really need to focus on. And if we look into those sectors in that report, and also if we look into the 1.5 report of IPCC, in chapter 5, what we tried to do was we tried to look into that what are these climate actions or mitigation actions which can have high synergies with the different sustainable development goals. And I'll just say very briefly that, so this shows that green ones are showing that what kind of actions have synergies with the sustainable development goals. And this shows that similar activities, what trade-off they have. So it clearly shows that if we are acting on the mitigation actions, then they definitely have more synergies, especially if we are acting on the energy demand sector. So I'll just focus on these first. And if we look into the different sectors of the energy demand, so industry, building and transport, and then different options where we have the behavioral options, accelerated energy efficiency and others, it's very clear that it's the in the energy sector, the accelerated energy efficiency has the highest co-benefits in terms of the sustainable development goals. And in the energy supply sector, the non-biomass renewables have the highest synergies with the most of the sustainable development goals. So with this in mind, what we try to do is that, so energy demand sector, working on the energy demand sectors and the non-biomass renewables really can provide not only the climate benefit, but also the highest co-benefits in terms of sustainable development goals. So with this in mind, I'll just try to share with you that in these 10 reports, as I said, what we have come up with is that actually in this whole decade, if we focus on these energy demand sectors and the dietary choice and the nature-based solution like land and ocean, so these ecosystem-based efforts, they can produce how much of mitigation potential, but we see that maximum are in the industry, building and transport sector, and of course other sectors also, but they can actually deliver 70% of the reduction that is needed for towards going towards the net zero. So in one of our recent publications, what we tried to do is that we tried to see that what are the mitigation strategies which can help us in avoiding the emission. That means preventive action, and then what can help in improving our technologies and lead to less emission, and what can be the how can we shift our choices, and then we can have lesser emission. So I would focus on this avoid option because in Asia, which is more a growing economy, so where it will be more developing now, and there are many emerging countries, we see that in the industry sector, it's a circular economy, and the industrial symbiosis and eco-industrial parks have the highest potential for avoiding emission, and also they have the synergies with the Sustainable Development Goals. And this shows, the blue bar shows that what level of actors. So given the actors network, where you need more involvement of the network, actor network. So for transition, we need actors to be involved in the transition process. So this shows us that what is the proportion of actors, if we consider all the actors that they are needed, then what level of actors, what proportion of actors are needed for making this transition for the industry sector. So these are actually based on different case studies taken from all over the world, including Asia. So we did similar study for the transport sector, and we find that, say, urban living in compact cities, and which can lead to reduction in ownership of vehicles, can help in avoiding, and then what level of synergies with the SDGs we have. So similarly, we did for building sector also, and so energy saving behavior, and which is, say, passive design, so architectural design, how they can lead to avoiding emission. So with all these in mind, so this is what we are showing is from different literature, which shows that in different case studies, these actions, mitigation actions, have a very close relation with the Sustainable Development Goals, and also what is the network that will be needed for making the transition to happen. So with this in mind, what I'm trying to show is from the Indian economy, some of the numbers to show that how the Indian economy is making progress or regress or whatever. So that's something which I'm going to share with you. So it clearly shows that electricity intensity of the Indian economy is declining over time. And if we look at the CO2 emission growth, if this is due to the activity growth, then the decomposition analysis clearly shows that the energy intensity improvement is leading to better and better energy efficiency, and which is leading to less and less emission. So this is one thing is very clear coming up. And if we look at the industry sector, we can just see, that in 70s decade, 1 unit of GDP production needed 1 unit of energy. But from mid-90s, we can see that how decoupling started. And now we can see how the decoupling between energy and the activity growth has happened, because mostly of the energy intensity or efficiency improvement and the structural change of the economy. So what all these have led to is we did an analysis based on the decoupling intensity estimate, or sorry, decoupling elasticity estimate, and where we are trying to show that this historical improvement, which are historical in the sense that there have been many policies which have been taken, and then what is the India's NDC commitment. And so India's NDC commitment is the 30 to 35% of emission intensity reduction from 2005 level to 2030, considering the emission intensity of GDP. So now our analysis clearly shows that attainment of this target requires an average change in emission intensity of 1.4% annual. And during 2005 and 2013, India achieved a reduction, and so a reduction of 15% already. And so industrial sector outperformed actually by bringing the emission intensity down by 23%. So if we take all these numbers into consideration, then we will see that during 2005 and 2013, emission intensity of India at the national level is reducing at an annual average rate of 2%. So just by keeping on this trajectory, we can say that India will be able to surpass its emission intensity target under the NDC goal by 2025, and there will be an overachievement of 10% of the target in the target year of 2030. And this has happened in all sectors. So this is in the industry sector. You can see that how energy intensity has improved, and this is the activity growth. This is also in the agriculture sector. You can see that how the energy intensity improvement is happening over the years, although there was a little bit of a change in the middle because of several reasons. I'm not going into that. But what I'm trying to show is that, so in the service sector also there has been intensity growth, but where India is lagging behind is the power sector. So power sector, it's the fuel mix, coal mix is really making it more and more carbon intensive. Although the electricity intensity per GDP is declining because of the electricity intensity improvement, because of the technology adoption, but then we see that the fuel mix in the power sector is really something which needs attention now to have more higher emission reduction. So I'm just giving an example that I'm just giving from this natural experiment during the pandemic. I'm just taking the example from the city of Calcutta, where this was the pre-pandemic emission of the air pollutants. So how in the morning and the evening hours, you have the different NOx, SOx, and all other elements, and this is the ozone. But during the pandemic, when the shutdown was there, then in the city itself, you can see that they are just non-visible, which is very clear that the vehicular, because then the mobility was stopped, right? So the vehicular movement is the main contributor, and the fuel use is the main contributor to the city's air pollution level. So which simply says that more electrification can help in cities' vehicular traffic, although efficiency, etc., all are there, but just a fuel switch can solve the problem, which simply implies that there is going to be more demand for electricity in India. And I have already said that in India, power sector really needs attention. So although in the demand sector side, there are many good actions have been helping in relative decoupling for India, but now really focus should be on the power sector. And I'm just giving an example that during the fast growing phase, because now I'll bring in the case of very fastest growing South Asian country of Bangladesh. But before that, what I wanted to say is that when all other countries in Asia were in the fast growth phase, then I can say that their years are written here, but this should be 1965 to 1997 for Malaysia. So, but for South Korea and Malaysia, actually emission, the energy consumption was more than the GDP, right? So it was the GDP elasticity, if we say that was much higher. But for China and Singapore, who started much later, who continued much later, they had a better energy consumption compared to the GDP. So GDP elasticity was less for India also. But for Bangladesh, again, this is very interesting. Although they are starting in this decade, but their energy consumption is higher than the GDP level. So what it simply says, because I'm now working closely with the Bangladesh government, and then I see that the energy intensity has not been in their portfolio almost absent. So there is a role of energy efficiency in Bangladesh. And also, if you look at Bangladesh, then in many of the social indicators, they have been doing fantastically and doing even better than India on many of these parameters. But when we look at that, what is really making their energy sector unsustainable going forward is really the low renewable energy proportion, and also the air pollution level, and the non-diversification of the energy supply sectors solely based on the domestic gas production. So what we tried to do was we tried to understand what are the barriers to transforming or making a transition to the renewable energy in Bangladesh. And we identified the hierarchy of the barriers which needs to be overcome, and also simultaneously sometimes. So human capacity and institutional procedure needs to be looked into together. Otherwise, this problem cannot be solved. So there are these hierarchies we have come up with. But another thing which we have come up with is, as I heard earlier, that in Bangladesh, actually for cooling demand, given the whole natural gas network, they can switch on to the geothermal and hydrogen, but that transition has to be planned from today. Otherwise, that transition cannot happen. For them, solar and wind transition will be very hard given the availability of land space. So with all these, what I just wanted to say is that we have been working with the Bangladeshi researchers, and from 30 research papers, we came up with the top 10 actionable priorities in a white paper. And then we wanted to know what is the transition that will be needed. So we identified 10 priorities, what can be done. Top is the faster renewable energy penetration is needed, but we have already seen that what are the barriers, so that needs to be overcome. And then we tried to see that how they are linked to, if these 10 priorities are followed, how they are linked to the different sustainable development goals. So it's just not the energy sector sustainability, but also the wider socioeconomic benefit through sustainable development goal achievement also can be achieved. But another thing which we found is that that can happen through international cooperation in the region, and that can advance these energy efficiency, capacity building, and many other things which can happen. So with these, I'll stop here and I'll wait for the questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Professor Roy. You gave a very detailed and solid analysis. Thank you so much. Maybe he will come soon. So I'd like to take this opportunity to present the energy transition in China. I'll try to make it very quick. You already know our presidency have announced our carbon neutral target by 2060. So we like to realize this to simulate how to realize this target. And so we have made an energy transition simulation system. And because our energy mix is coal-dominated, so it's very hard from traditional energy system transmit to a new energy system. So this the main characteristic of this new energy system is renewable energy dominated. So the major drivers for this transition is technology innovation, energy substitution, and also the decarbonization target constraint. And also we have to make great effort to the disposal of existing facilities, especially coal-fired generation. And also we have to care about energy system safety and reliability. So here's the major drivers. And also we have some major challenges. The first is limited time frame. We only have 40 years to realize this carbon neutral target. And also we have to face the fact of carbon blocking, because in current we have already many coal-fired generation. It's a very huge infrastructure. So there is some carbon locking effect we have to think about. And another is the acceptable transition cost. Yeah, because this transition is policy driven. It's not totally market driven. Yeah, it's policy driven. So we have to accept expensive cost for a new energy system. So this need policy in a new market-based mechanism to enhance this transition. So, and another is the effective policy intervention. Yeah, this is it's not easy between central government and the local government. So we have to handle this and coordinate this. And for this purpose, we build a energy model. In this model, we have a capacity expansion module, we have a power dispatch module, and also power transmission module, and also carbon target constraint. Yeah. Then from this model, we can generate some very significant outputs. Yeah. There are system cost. In this model, we define the cost, generation cost, not only the fuel cost, but also include all the system cost, which is growing in the future. And also we have we can generate curtailment rate of the old facility, and also we have a power lay generation mix. It's a energy mix. Yeah. So just simply say this model. Okay. From this model, we can have some very important outputs. Yeah, the first is the energy mix in the future. Yeah. So in future, we have much larger share of renewable power. Yeah, this renewable power will dominate the future energy system. And the major one is wind and the solar. And also the current coal-fired power generation will decrease gradually to a very small share. And also under the carbon neutral target, our fossil fuel power will play different role from now, because the future role will be the flexible energy source. Yeah. Yeah. Here's the result from our model. Yeah. Even for the carbon neutral future scenario, we still have very small share of fossil energy. It's around 12%, and half our coal-fired power, half our gas-fired power, because the whole system needs flexible. And also, for this simulation, we can simulate the installed capacity of fossil fuel decrease, and also the role of fossil fuel power will change from baseload to flexible power, and also the high wind and the solar curtailments will need large energy storage. So at the last half period, we need to install a much larger storage energy. And also our emission reduction from CCS or CCUS technology will be 1 billion ton per year. That's the simulation result. Also, for the energy transmission, we need large energy scale power transmission, which will be 2.5 times higher than current situation. In the two large energy resources is west and the northeast, and both from solar and wind, and also a very small share of coal and gas. And the cost will be changed. Definitely the cost will increase. Also the cost structure will change, and from fuel cost to system cost. Yeah, so this will need a very large input to change current energy system to a future to a future carbon neutral power system. And the cost is estimated around 1.16% of China's GDP in 2020, so which is a very large number. And definitely there are some uncertainties to influence this analysis. Technology, learning curve, the resource, and also people's attitude to nuclear, gas costs, and others. Yeah, talk about in detail. For this purpose, for this carbon neutral energy system in future, we have a lot of energy, a lot of policy intentions, include subsidy, for example, feed-in tariff, R&D support, and also market-based scheme like emission trading scheme, green certificates, CCER. And also we still use commodity control policies like energy consumption control, energy intensity constraints, and renewable energy share limit. And also we have law and the standard like renewable energy law and the vehicle fuel efficiency standard and others. Also we have some financial instruments to support this transition. Yeah. Finally, well, by this a set of policies, we can go to a sustainable future, a sustainable energy system. That's I just very quickly summarize our energy transition in China and also the policy intentions. Yeah, we may discuss later. And so the time is quite limited. I don't know.
So Professor Ying, Dr. Cray is back with us. He had a computer problem, but I think maybe if we can do a short presentation, Volker, I think we can then carry on if that's okay with you, Professor Ying and Volker.
Professor Volker Cray, please.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, and apologies for the technical glitch. I have to admit that I didn't have such a thing happening at such an inconvenient time recently, so I basically had to reboot my computer. But let me get started immediately to not take more of your time. Actually, my presentation relates to quite a number of items that the previous speakers have drawn your attention to. In particular, the presentation by Joyashree Roy, because I wanted to actually draw your attention to some research we've been doing, and this is of course to be seen in the broader context of the overall research agenda on demand-focused action on climate change and the broader suite of sustainable development goals. So having heard Joyashree's presentation, I can probably speed up a little bit. Traditional analysis that looks at potential strategies and pathways towards carbon neutrality, and also in the broader context of the sustainable development goals, often has a supply side bias. So focusing on the transformation of the supply side system in a very traditional way. This tends to be slow because large infrastructure is involved, large scale technologies that do not scale very rapidly are involved here. This is of course also needed, but potentially more viable way of urgently making progress in terms of reducing emissions and at the same time improving sustainable development goals is a demand side focused transformation process, focusing on efficiency and behavior, and more relying on granular small scale technologies that have shown to be able to scale up much more rapidly than large scale lumpy technologies. So this is based on observable trends in social and technological change. So changing consumer preferences, for example, diets. Generally, more attention is given to services rather than ownership, if you think of mobility as a service. So the question is really, how can we provide services that at the same level or even better than we are consuming them now, but using less resources. In particular, I mean, if you think of vehicles, privately owned vehicles basically sit around 23 of 24 hours a day on average. So utilizing that capital in a more efficient way to provide the same levels of services actually offers huge leverages and also new business opportunities via sharing and circular economy based business models. Digitalization plays an important role in this, and as I already mentioned, granular small scale technologies that can be brought to scale more rapidly than other technologies. So from the SDG perspective, this essentially means taking responsible consumption and production, so SDG 12 as an entry point and towards climate mitigation, but also a broader suite of development goals. And here I'm showing some results actually of a figure or an adapted version of a figure that is from the IPCC special report on 1.5 on the from the chapter that Geographic co-led, showing benefits or trade-offs, or showing the impact of climate mitigation approaches on other SDGs, including health, different energy indicators here like renewables and so on, resource use, land use, and water, for example. The arrows here show the direction of what is desirable. So if the arrow goes down, lower is more desirable. If the arrow goes up, higher is more desirable in many ways. And if we now put into this context the demand-focused action pathway, which we call low energy demand scenario, or LED in short, then you see here, and this is consistent with what Doriashi has been reporting, that such an approach generally is very much in line with generating the greatest co-benefits and generating the least trade-offs with other sustainable development goals and climate. An example, a more tangible example, is air quality. We've heard about that earlier today. So without additional dedicated action on reducing air pollutants, so just via structural change, technology change, and behavior embedded in here, this would already be a significant contribution, around about a third reduction of death expected due to air pollution at the global scale. Now, to also link this specifically to Asia, and I won't go here into detail. I mean, this is basically a similar graph as the one before, showing co-benefits and trade-offs related to various SDG indicators due to climate action. Everything that's above the red line is a co-benefit. Everything that is below the red line is a trade-off. This is the global picture. Now, if you look at Asian economies, then you realize there is the situation here. As an example, I've put India and China, and in particular on the environmental side, there are larger co-benefits in Asia than there are on average globally. So that is actually very much reassuring. Of course, there are also challenges on the social side that may be implied. For example, those people who are employed in the fossil industry, thinking about how to transition those workers into a low carbon, sustainable future is an important aspect here, and definitely needs attention. But at large, the benefits seem to outweigh the trade-offs, in particular if we pay attention to the trade-offs under a just transition framing and ensure that the trade-offs are actually minimized. Let me leave it at that and spare you the specific policy measures. We've heard actually from Junichi Fujino earlier on cities playing an important role. That's something that we highlight in this research as well. But with that, let me stop and hand the floor give it back to the chair.
Okay, thank you, Professor Croy. Yeah, thank you for your presentation. And now we have had all the presentations, and thank you, every panelist for your contribution.